Okay guys, I'm back again for Twitter Files Part 8. Okay, this one's from Lee Fang. How Twitter quietly aided the Pentagon's covert online PSYOP campaign. Despite promises to shut down covert state-run propaganda networks, Twitter docs show that the social media giant directly assisted the US military's influence operations. Twitter has claimed for years that they make concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed platform manipulation. Here is Twitter testifying to Congress about its pledge to rapidly identify and shut down all state-backed covert information operations and deceptive propaganda, which they didn't do. But behind the scenes, Twitter gave approval and special protection to the US military's online psychological influence ops. Despite knowledge that Pentagon propaganda accounts used covert identities, Twitter did not suspend many for around 2 years or more. Some remain active. In 2017, a US Central Command CENTCOM official sent Twitter a list of 52 Arab language accounts were used to amplify certain messages. The official asked for priority service for 6 account verification for 1 and whitelistabilities for the others. Wow. Thanks, sure is tough to do web ops when you can't tweet. I've attached a list. The first 6 on the list are our priority accounts. Ideally, we could have them verified, blue checkmark and whitelisted, if there is such a thing. One of them, Yemen Current, is currently not indexing. Justice AR currently has a request in for verification, but haven't heard anything. The rest are accounts we use to amplify certain messages. Ideally, they could be whitelisted as well. Again, if it's too big an ask, the first 6 are the priority. If you need any sort of paperwork or verification from our office or SOCOM, please just let me know. Also, our SOCOM guys mentioned they'd love to be able to come in and meet up for a face-to-face talk if you think the right Twitter folks would be up for it. The same day CENTCOM sent the list, Twitter officials used a tool to grant a special whitelist tag that essentially provides verification status to the accounts without the blue checkmark, meaning they're exempt from spam abuse flags, more visible, likely to trend on hashtags. The CENTCOM accounts on the tweet list tweeted frequently about US military priorities in the Middle East, including promoting anti-Iran messages, promotion of the Saudi Arabia-US-backed war in Yemen, and accurate US drone strikes that claimed to only hit terrorists. CENTCOM then shifted strategies and deleted disclosures of ties to the Twitter accounts. The bios of the accounts changed to seemingly organic profiles. One bio read Euphrates Pulse. Another used an apparent deepfake profile pic and claimed to be a source of Iraqi occupation. One Twitter official who spoke to me said he feels deceived by the covert shift. Still, many emails from throughout 2020 show that high-level Twitter executives were well aware of the DoD's vast network of fake accounts and covert propaganda and did not suspend the accounts. For example, Twitter lawyer Jim Baker mused in a July 2020 email about an upcoming DoD meeting that the Pentagon used poor tradecraft in setting up its network and was seeking strategies for not exposing the accounts that are linked to each other or DoD or USG. Stacia Gardill, another Twitter attorney, replied that the Pentagon wanted a SCIF and may want to retroactively classify its social media activities to obfuscate their activity in this space, and that this may represent an overclassification to avoid embarrassment. Jim, Angela and I discussed attendance at this classified briefing. I heard from Facebook that they were securing SCIFs in DC and San Francisco for a meeting, possibly Friday. I have some significant concerns that the motivations for classifications are slightly different than the ones you outlined in the email below. I think it's possible DoD is using retroactive classification to obfuscate their activity in this space, and that this may represent an overclassification to avoid embarrassment. Angela and I think you would be more effective in this meeting than me, as the officials will view you more seriously. Thoughts on this? Separate and apart from the merits, I have some concerns with attending due to COVID exposure and my 2 immunocompromised family members. In several other 2020 emails, higher-level Twitter executives, lawyers discussed the covert network and even recirculated the 2017 list from CENTCOM and shared another list of 157 undisclosed Pentagon accounts, again mostly focused on Middle East military issues. In a May 2020 email, Twitter's Lisa Roman emailed the DoD with two lists. One list was accounts previously provided to us, and another list Twitter detected. The accounts tweeted in Russian and Arabic on US military issues in Syria, ISIS, and many also did not disclose Pentagon ties. Many of these secretive US military propaganda accounts, despite detection by Twitter as late as 2020, but potentially earlier, continued tweeting throughout this year, some not suspended until May 2022 or later, according to records I reviewed. In August 2022, a Stanford Internet Observatory report exposed a US military covert propaganda network on Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, and other apps using fake news portals and deepfake images and memes against US foreign adversaries. The US propaganda network relentlessly pushed narratives against Russia, China, and other foreign countries. They accused Iran of threatening Iraq's water supply security and flooding the country with crystal meth, and of harvesting the organs of Afghan refugees. The Stanford report did not identify all of the accounts in the network, but one they did name was the exact same Twitter account CENTCOM asked for a whitelist privileges in its 2017 email. I verified via Twitter's internal tool the account used an AI-created deepfake image. In subsequent reporting, Twitter was cast as an unbiased hero for removing a network of fake user accounts promoting pro-Western policy positions. Media covering the story described Twitter as evenly applying its policies and proactive in suspending the DoD network. The reality is much more murky. Twitter actively assisted CENTCOM's network going back to 2017 and as late as 2020, knew these accounts were covert, designed to deceive, to manipulate the discourse, a violation of Twitter's policies and promises. They waited years to suspend. Twittercom's team was closely in touch with reporters working to minimise Twitter's role. When the Wash Post reported on the scandal, Twitter officials congratulated each other because the story didn't mention any Twitter employees and focused largely on the Pentagon. Wow. I hope you're well. We wanted to give you a heads up. The Washington Post will be publishing a piece most likely this weekend that sheds more light on the US government aspects of the recent Graphica Stanford report about tech companies removing US-based influence campaigns, in a story that's mostly focused on DoD and Facebook. However, there'll be a couple of lines that reference us alongside Facebook, in that we reached out to them for a meeting. We don't think they'll tie it to anything Mudge related or name any Twitter employees. We decline to comment. I suspect this piece will get more attention in Washington with the DoD angle. We'll keep you posted. Hi folks, here's the piece which I think turned out as expected. So they were happy not to be named. The conduct with the US military's covert network stands in stark contrast with how Twitter has boasted about rapidly identifying and taking down covert accounts tied to state-backed influence operations including Thailand, Russia, Venezuela, and others since 2016. Here is my reported piece with more detail. I was given access to Twitter for a few days. I signed, agreed to nothing. Twitter had no input into anything I did or wrote. The searches were carried out by a Twitter attorney, so what I saw could be limited. And this is the Intercept. Twitter executives have claimed for years the company makes concerted efforts to detect and thwart government-backed covert propaganda campaigns on its platform. Behind the scenes, however, the social networking giant provided direct approval and internal protection to the US military's network of social media accounts and online personas, whitelisting a batch of accounts at the request of the government. The Pentagon has used this network, which includes US government-generated news portals and memes, in an effort to shape opinion in Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, and beyond. The accounts in question started out openly affiliated with the US government, but then the Pentagon appeared to shift tactics and began concealing its affiliation with some of these accounts, a move toward the type of intentional platform manipulation that Twitter has publicly opposed. Though Twitter executives maintained awareness of the accounts, they did not shut them down, but they let them remain active for years. Some remain active. The revelations are buried in the archives of Twitter emails and internal tools, to which The Intercept was granted access for a brief period last week, alongside a handful of other writers and reporters. Following Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, the billionaire started giving access to company documents, saying in a Twitter space that the general idea is to surface anything bad Twitter's done in the past. The files, which included records generated under Musk's ownership, provided unprecedented, if incomplete, insight into decision-making within a major social media company. Twitter did not provide unfettered access to company information. Rather, for 3 days last week, they allowed me to make requests without restriction that were then fulfilled on my behalf by an attorney, meaning that the search results may not have been exhaustive. I did not agree to any conditions governing the use of the documents, and I made efforts to authenticate and contextualize the documents through further reporting. The redactions in the embedded documents in this story were done by The Intercept to protect privacy, not Twitter. The direct assistance Twitter provided to the Pentagon goes back at least 5 years. On the 26th of July 2017, Nathaniel Carla, at the same time an official working with the US Central Command, known as CENTCOM, a division of the Defense Department, emailed a Twitter representative with the company's public policy team with a request to approve the verification of one account and whitelist a list of Arab language accounts we use to amplify certain messages. In other words, they used to cause trouble. That's what I think. We've got some accounts that are not indexing on hashtags. Perhaps they were flagged as bots, wrote Carla. A few of these had built-in real following and we hope to salvage. Carla added that he was happy to provide more paperwork from his office, or SOCOM, the acronym for the US Special Operations Command. Twitter at the time had built out an expanded abuse detection system aimed in part toward flagging malicious activity related to the Islamic State and other terror organisations operating in the Middle East. As an indirect consequence of these efforts, one former Twitter employee explained to The Intercept, accounts controlled by the military that were frequently engaging with extremist groups were being automatically flagged as spam. Because that's what they do. They go over, look, they get in contact with these people, they get this following, and they radicalise them, and that's where you get things like ISIS from. Okay, the former employee who was involved with the whitelisting of CENTCOM accounts spoke with the Intercept under condition of anonymity because they were not authorised to speak publicly. In his email, Carlos sent a spreadsheet with 52 accounts. He asked for priority service for 6 of the accounts, including Yemen Current, an account used to broadcast announcement about US drone strikes in Yemen. Around the same time, Yemen Current, which has since been deleted, has emphasised that US drone strikes were accurate and killed terrorists, not civilians, and promoted the US and Saudi-backed assault on Houthi rebels in that country. Other accounts on the list were focused on promoting US-supported militias in Syria and anti-Iran messages in Iraq. One account discussed legal issues in Kuwait. Though many accounts remain focused on the topic area, others move from topic to topic. For instance, Dala to EL. One of the CENTCOM accounts shifted from messaging around drone strikes in Yemen in 2017 to Syrian government-focused communications this year. On the same day that CENTCOM sent its request, members of Twitter's site integrity team went into an internal company system used for managing the reach of various users and applied a special exemption tag to the accounts, internal logs show. One engineer, who asked not to be named because he was not authorised to speak to the media, said he'd never seen this type of tag before, but upon close inspection said that the effect of the whitelist tag essentially gave the account the privileges of Twitter verification without a visible blue check. Twitter verification would have bestowed a number of advantages, such as an invulnerability to algorithmic bots that flag accounts for spam or abuse, as well as other strikes that lead to decreased visibility or suspension. Kayla told Twitter that the accounts would all be USG attributed Arabic language accounts tweeting on relevant security issues. That promise fell short, as many of the accounts subsequently deleted disclosures of affiliation with the US government. The Internet Archive does not preserve the full history of every account, but The Intercept identified several accounts that initially listed themselves as US government accounts in their bios, but after being whitelisted, shed any disclosure that they were affiliated with the military and posed as ordinary users. This appears to align with a major report published in August by online security researchers affiliated with the Stanford Internet Observatory, which reported on thousands of accounts that they suspected to be part of a state-backed information operation, many of which used photorealistic human faces generated by artificial intelligence, a practice also known as deep fakes. The researchers connected with these accounts with a vast online ecosystem that included fake news websites, meme accounts on Telegram and Facebook, and online personalities that echoed Pentagon messages, often without disclosure of affiliation with the US military. Some of the accounts accuse Iran of threatening Iraq's water security and flooding the country with crystal meth, while others promoted allegations that Iran was harvesting the organ of Afghan refugees. The Stanford report did not definitively tie the sham accounts to CENTCOM or provide a complete list of Twitter accounts, but the emails obtained by The Intercept show that the creation of at least one of these accounts was directly affiliated with the Pentagon. One of the accounts that Kayla asked to have whitelisted, MK Ultra, was identified by the researchers as appearing to use deepfake photo to obscure its real identity. Initially, according to the Wayback Machine, MK did disclose that it was a US government account affiliated with CENTCOM, but at some point this disclosure was deleted and the account's photo was changed to the one Stanford identifies as a deep fake. The new Twitter bio claimed the account was an unbiased source of opinion and information, and roughly translated from Arabic, dedicated to serving Iraqis and Arabs. The account, before it was suspended earlier this year, routinely tweeted messages denouncing Iran and other US adversaries, including Houthi rebels in Yemen. Another CENTCOM account, Alt Huga, which posts anti-Iran and anti-ISIS content focused on an Iraqi audience, changed its Twitter bio from CENTCOM affiliation to an Arabic phrase that simply reads Euphrates Pulse. The former Twitter employee told The Intercept they were surprised to learn of the Defense Department's shifting tactics. It sounded like DoD was doing something shady and definitely not in line with what they had presented to us at the time, they said. Twitter did not respond to a request for comment. It's deeply concerning if the Pentagon is working to shape public opinion about our military's role abroad, and even worse, if private companies are helping to conceal it, said Eric Sperling, the executive director of Just Foreign Policy, a non-profit that works towards diplomatic solutions to foreign conflicts. Congress and social media companies should investigate and take action to ensure that, at the very least, our citizens are fully informed when their tax money is being spent on putting a positive spin on our endless wars, Sperling added. For many years, Twitter has pledged to shut down all state-backed disinformation and propaganda efforts, never making an explicit exception for the US. In 2020, Twitter spokesperson Nick Pickles, who's in a bit of a pickle, in a testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, said that the company was taking aggressive efforts to shut down coordinated platform manipulation efforts attributed to government agencies. Or maybe he's not in a pickle. Combating attempts to interfere in conversations on Twitter remains a top priority for the company, and we continue to invest heavily in our detection, disruption, and transparency efforts related to state-backed information operations. Our goal is to remove bad faith actors and to advance public understanding of these critical topics, said Pickles. In 2018, for instance, Twitter announced the mass suspension of accounts tied to Russian government-linked propaganda efforts. 2 years later, the company boasted of shutting down almost 1,000 accounts for association with the Thai military, but rules on platform manipulation, it appears, have not been applied to American military efforts. The emails obtained by The Intercept show that not only did Twitter whitelist these accounts in 2017 explicitly at the behest of the military, but also that high-level officials at the company discussed the accounts as potentially problematic in the following years. In the summer of 2020, officials from Facebook reportedly identified fake accounts attributed to CENTCOM's influence operation on its platform and warned the Pentagon that if Silicon Valley could easily out these accounts as inauthentic, so could foreign adversaries, according to a September report in the Washington Post. Twitter emails show that during the time in 2020, Facebook and Twitter executives were invited by the Pentagon's top attorney to attend classified briefings in a sensitive, compartmented information facility, also known as SCIF, used for highly sensitive meetings. Like Schiff in the Skiff? Facebook had a series of one-to-one conversations with their senior legal leadership and DoD's General Counsel, RE Inauthentic Activity, wrote Yoel Roth, then the head of Trust and Safety at Twitter. Per Facebook, continued Roth, DoD have indicated a strong desire to work with us to remove the activity, but are now refusing to discuss additional details or steps outside of a classified conversation. Stacia Cardille, then an attorney with Twitter, noted in her email to her colleagues that the Pentagon may want to retroactively classify its social media activities to obfuscate their activity in this space, and that this may represent an overclassification to avoid embarrassment. Jim Baker, then the Deputy General Counsel of Twitter in the same thread, wrote that the Pentagon appeared to have used poor tradecraft in setting up various Twitter accounts, sought to potentially cover its tracks, and was likely seeking a strategy for avoiding public knowledge that the accounts are linked to each other or to DoD or USG. Baker speculated that in the meeting, the DoD might want to give us a timetable for shutting them down in a more prolonged way that will not compromise any ongoing operations or reveal their connections to DoD. What was discussed at the classified meetings, which ultimately did take place according to the Post, was not included in the Twitter emails provided to The Intercept, but many of the fake accounts remained active for at least another year. Some of the accounts on CENTCOM list remain active even now, like this one, which includes affiliation with CENTCOM, and this one which does not, while many were swept off the platform in a mass suspension on May 16th. In a separate email sent in May 2020, Lisa Roman, then Vice President of the company in charge of global public policy, emailed William S. Castle, a Pentagon attorney, along with Roth, with an additional list of Defense Department Twitter accounts. The first tab lists those accounts previously provided to us, and the second, associated accounts that Twitter has discovered, wrote Roman. It's not clear from this single email what Roman is requesting. She references a phone call preceding the email, but she notes that the second tab of accounts, the ones that had not been explicitly provided to Twitter by the Pentagon, may violate our rules. The attachment included a batch of accounts tweeting in Russian and Arabic about human rights violations committed by ISIS. Many accounts in both tabs were not openly identified as affiliated with the US government. Twitter executives remained aware of the Defense Department's special status. This past January, a Twitter executive recirculated the CENTCOM list of Twitter accounts, originally whitelisted in 2017. The email simply read FYI and was directed to several Twitter officials, including Patrick Conlon, a former Defense Department intelligence analyst, then working on the Site Integrity Unit as Twitter's Global Threat Intelligence lead. Internal records also show that the accounts that remained from Carla's original list are still whitelisted. Following the mass suspension of many of the accounts this past May, Twitter's team worked to limit blowback from its involvement in the campaign. Shortly before publication of the Washington Post story in September, Katie Roseborough, then a communications specialist at Twitter, wrote to alert Twitter lawyers and lobbyists about the upcoming piece. It's a story that's mostly focused on the DoD and Facebook. However, there will be a couple of lines that reference us alongside Facebook, in that we reached out to the DoD for a meeting. We don't think they'll tie it to anything Mudge related or name any Twitter employees. We declined to comment, she wrote. Mudge is a reference to Peter Zatko, a Twitter whistleblower who filed a complaint with federal authorities in July alleging lax security measures and penetration of the company by foreign agents. After the Washington Post story published, the Twitter team congratulated one another because the story minimised Twitter's role in the CENTCOM PSYOP campaign. Instead, the story largely revolved around the Pentagon's decision to begin a review of its clandestine psychological operations on social media. Thanks for doing all you could to manage this one, wrote Rebecca Han, another former Twitter communications official. It didn't seem to get too much traction beyond Verge, CNN and WAPO editors promoting. CENTCOM did not initially provide comment to The Intercept following publication of this story. CENTCOM's media desk referred to The Intercept to Brigadier General Pat Ryder's comments in a September briefing in which he said that the Pentagon had requested a review of Department of Defense military information support activities, which is simply meant to be an opportunity for us to assess the current work that's being done in this arena and really shouldn't be interpreted as anything beyond that. The US military and intelligence community have long pursued a strategy of fabricated online personas and third parties to amplify certain narratives in foreign countries. The idea being that the authentic-looking Persian language news portal or local Afghan woman would have greater organic influence than an official Pentagon press release. Military online propaganda efforts have largely been governed by a 2006 memorandum. The memo notes that the Defense Department's internet activities should openly acknowledge US involvement, except in cases when a combatant commander believes that it will not be possible due to operational considerations. This method of non-disclosure, the memo states, is only authorized for operations in the global war on terrorism or when specified in other Secretary of Defense execute orders. In 2019, lawmakers passed a measure known as Section 1631, a reference to a provision of the National Defense Authorization Act, further legally affirming clandestine psychological operations by the military in a bid to counter online disinformation campaigns by Russia, China, and other foreign adversaries. In 2008, the US Special Operations Command opened a request for a service to provide web-based influence products and tools in support of strategic and long-term US government goals and objectives. The contract referred to the Trans-Regional Web Initiative, an effort to create online news sites designed to win hearts and minds in the battle to counter Russian influence in Central Asia and global Islamic terrorism. The contract was initially carried out by General Dynamics Information Technology, a subsidiary of the defense contractor General Dynamics, in connection with CENTCOM communication offices in the Washington, D.C. area and in Tampa, Florida. Also known as Web Ops, run by a defense contractor known as Colsa Corp, was used to create fictitious online identities designed to counter online recruitment efforts by ISIS and other terrorist networks. The Intercept spoke to a former employee of a contractor on the condition of anonymity for legal protection engaged in these online propaganda networks for the Trans-Regional Web Initiative. He described a loose newsroom-style operation employing former journalists operating out of a generic suburban office building. Generally, what happens at the time when I was there, CENTCOM will develop a list of messaging points they want us to focus on, said the contractor. Basically, we want you to focus on, say, counter-terrorism and a general framework we want to talk about. From there, he said, supervisors would help craft content that was distributed through a network of CENTCOM-controlled websites and social media accounts. As the contractors created content to support narratives from military command, they were instructed to tag each content item, with a specific military objective. Generally, the contractor said, the news items he created were technically factual but always crafted in a way that closely reflected the Pentagon's goals. We had some pressure from CENTCOM to push stories, he added, while noting that he worked at the sites years ago before the transition to more covert operations. At the time, we weren't doing any of that black hat stuff. This story has been updated with information provided by CENTCOM following publication. Wait, before you go on about your day, ask yourself, how likely is it the story you just read would have been produced by a different news outlet if the Intercept hadn't done it? And they just are asking for donations. And that's the end of that. So that's the Twitter files updated so far. And I just better check if there's any more before I go. Okay, we do have something else. Sourpatch Lid says, sons of bees, this ship has sailed. Daily Wire said the FBI responds to the Twitter files. It is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. Really? Let's have a look.
Alert now, we are getting our first response from the FBI to the Twitter file dumps. The statement reads, the correspondence between the FBI and Twitter show nothing more than examples of our traditional, long-standing and ongoing federal government and private sector engagements, which involve numerous companies over multiple sectors and industries. As evidenced in the correspondence, the FBI provides critical information to the private sector in an effort to allow them to protect themselves and their customers. The men and women of the FBI work every day to protect the American public. It is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. That just in.
They did it to themselves. Okay guys, I hope you have a good morning, afternoon or evening, and I will be back very, very shortly. Okay, guys, have a good one. Bye.